The Supreme Court today says President Buhari's Order 10 is unconstitutional. We'll find out what that means exactly. And presidential aspirant of the PDP, Sam Owabuwa, says poverty is a big threat to Nigeria and there is a need for good leadership to save the situation. Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is Politics Today, live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimbaloye in Abuja. Let's tell you that it is now 11 days since the National Assembly re-amended, passed, and again transmitted the electoral bill to President Buhari for his assent. This comes after he has first rejected it, but he told Channels Television exclusively that he will sign the bill should the National Assembly fix all the gray areas he pointed out to them. And so the nation now awaits the president's assent and hoping that the president will keep to his promise of signing the bill. He's definitely on that as soon as the president does, especially now that there's going to be an election tomorrow, and the process, of course, gets the attention of many Nigerians. Let's also tell you that a presidential aspirant of on the platform of the main opposition, People's Democratic Party, PDP, Mazi Sam Owabuwa, is worried about the rate of poverty in the country and is insisting that poverty poses a huge danger to the existence of the country. Mr. Owabuwa said this when he visited the former military head of state, Ibrahim Babangida, in his hilltop residence in Minna, Niger State capital. The presidential hopeful on arrival met behind closed door with IBB and also met with leadership of the PDP in the state. But in an interview shortly after the closed door meeting with former military president Babangida, Sam Owabuwa said the biggest challenge facing the country is joblessness, which according to him is causing the worsening insecurity and socio-economic challenges and increased level of poverty. Take a listen to him.
Delegates. We need to find out what is causing insecurity in Nigeria. And from our analysis, there are a couple of things. First is poverty. 2 is joblessness. 3 is injustice. And 4th, slack enforcement of law and order.
One of the PDP's presidential hopeful there. Let's see what is happening on the APC side. The federal lawmaker representing Ekiti State in the Senate and an aspirant in the Ekiti APC governorship primaries, Senator Okwayemi Bamidele, appears to have changed his mind on the line of action he wanted to pursue as a remedy in the aftermath of the exercise, the governorship primaries. Senator Bamidele today in a statement says he will not dump the APC and has also decided to drop any lawsuit to challenge the exercise. Senator Bamidele insists his latest decision does not take away his firm belief that the primary election is a sheer charade and an impunity. It's now time for us to keep you up to date with some of your political roundup stories.
Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has promised to give the youth more opportunity in governance and party affairs. President Buhari made this remark during his meeting with the All Progressives Congress Youth Lobby Group today at the Presidential Villa in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory.
The APC will ensure full participation of young people at all levels. I will also support the aspirations of credible and committed young people who are vying for positions in the upcoming convention.
Governor Maruf Interior of Adamawa State has described the Igbo community in his state as critical in the socio-economic development of the state. The governor made this comment while playing host to leaders of the Igbo Cultural Association at Government House in Yola. According to him, his administration has been fair to all people residing in Adamawa by ensuring an equitable distribution of resources to all, especially the Igbo extraction, who he describes as a resourceful and progressive community in the state. He therefore appeals for a peaceful coexistence amongst them and not allow divisions among them. Edo State Governor Godwin Obaseki is confident that reports of farmers and herders clashes coming out from the state will now be few and far between. This, according to him, is based on security reports that he has been receiving from the different security agencies in the state. Governor Obaseki gave this assurance to the leadership of the Nigerian Union of Journalists Edo State Council, who were on a courtesy visit to Government House in Benin City. He also informed them that CCTV cameras have been strategically placed on the state capital to monitor the crime situation. While commending the security agencies for the collaboration in keeping Edo State safe, Governor Obaseki confirmed that the state-run vigilante outfit is undergoing training and the personnel properly screened before recruitment.
We have a command and control center where, incidents are being logged in, and we have a security data management system, and we can tell as crimes occur every day in the state and the pattern and nature of the crimes.
It's less than 24 hours to the area council elections in the Federal Capital Territory, and members of the civil society organization in Abuja are appealing to citizens to turn out en masse to cast their votes. Members of Yaga Africa, a frontline civil society organization in Abuja, took their sensitization to Kuje Market, where they urged the electorate to shun violence and vote buying as well as selling during the Saturday area council polls. A total of 1,373,412 registered voters are expected to participate in tomorrow's FCT area council elections. Ahead of the 2023 presidential elections, the Director General of the Progressive Solidarity for Asiwaju, Senator El Jibril Dogua, is asking Nigerians to elect a man with experience and international exposure in order to better the lot of the masses. Addressing a news conference in Abuja after a meeting of the group held behind closed doors, Senator Dogua says Asiwaju Bola Tinubu deserves to be given a chance to replicate the achievements he recorded as governor of Lagos State. The group insists that Nigeria is in dire need of a president who can turn around the fortunes of the nation for good.
He's a man who is so concerned about the unity of Nigeria. He's a man who cares so much about the development and human development too.
Akwa Ibom State Governor Mr. Emmanuel has clarified that he has no intention of running a surrogate leadership after leaving office in 2023 or arrogating to himself the powers of a godfather upon the emergence of his preferred aspirant. The governor gave the clarification while playing host to leaders of a foremost Akwa Ibom-based socio-political group, Ibom Patriots, who were at Government House in Uyo on a solidarity visit with Governor Emmanuel as grand patron of the group. Former President Goodluck Jonathan has expressed confidence in the ability of Governor Bala Mohammed of Bauchi to lead the country. Speaking during their meeting last night, former President Jonathan says he's very familiar with the governor's commitments to national service, having worked under him as FCT minister.
I feel so happy that even though I've left office, I have some people who work with me that are also very active. You being one of them as the governor of Bauchi State. So those of you who work with me, it is my duty to support you.
And River State Governor Nyesom Wike has streamlined the number of local government councils that will benefit from the 20 million naira anti-bunkering grant to only those whose chairmen have shown commitment in the ongoing fight against oil theft and operation of illegal refineries in the state. Governor Wike on January the 19th, during the meeting with the 23 council chairmen, explained that each of them will get 20 million naira grant from the state government to destroy illegal refinery sites. But at the security meeting with heads of security and few local government chairmen today, the governor says the promise has been reviewed and approval made for only 5 local government councils.
Thank you so much, everyone. Robust roundup stories from across the nation. Now you've been served and up to date. Now, the Governor Mai Mala Buni-led Caretaker Extraordinary Convention Planning Committee of the All Progressives Congress APC has proposed some amendments to the party's constitution. Senator John Akpan Uduedeye, the secretary of the committee, says in a statement that in accordance with the Article 30, subsection 3 of the All Progressives Congress Constitution, the Governor Mai Mala Buni chaired Caretaker and Extraordinary Planning Committee has served a notice of proposed amendment to the party's constitution on members of the National Convention. Don't forget that the convention will be happening on the 26th of February 2022. And let's get to the very story of tonight, the biggest story of the day. It's a landmark decision of the Supreme Court. And when the Supreme Court decides, it's the verdict, it's the last. The verdict is that the Supreme Court has declared as unlawful and unconstitutional the Executive Order 10 on the funding of state judiciary and legislature in a split decision earlier today by the Apex Court. Well, it's a majority of courts of 7-member panel agree that the president exceeded his constitutional powers in issuing the EO10. 6 of the 7 members of the panel proceeded to void and set aside the EO10 issued by President Muhammadu Buhari. The Apex Court also dismissed the 66 billion suit filed by the state governors against the federal government. The 36 state governors had in the suit sought an order of the court to compel the federal government to take up funding of capital projects for state high courts, Sharia Court of Appeal, and Customary Court of Appeal. They had also applied for an order of the Apex Court to compel the federal government to pay them 66 billion naira, being an amount they have so far spent on capital projects for the 3 courts. President Muhammadu Buhari signed the Order 10 into law in May 2020 and set up a committee to fashion out strategies and modalities for the implementation of the financial autonomy for the state legislature and the state judiciary. In legal terms, what does this mean? Everyone, we're going to give you perspective to this. Now, the governors frowned at it. They said the president didn't consult them when the president signed. Well, the president has been giving reasons for it. First and foremost, he said this is part of restructuring. We need to do the restructuring in bits and pieces. And he went ahead to say the judiciary and the legislature in the state needs to be independent. He went ahead and signed the Order 10. The governors were not happy. They went to court and challenged the decision of the federal government. Well, the Supreme Court is where the state government and the federal government can settle their scores. Now the Supreme Court has sided on the side of the governors or the state government. Let's get some sound legal opinion on the outcome of the Supreme Court. I'm being joined tonight by a professor of law and the longest-served DG of the law school, a former dean of the Faculty of Law at Abia State University, and presently teaching law at Base University in Abuja, a law teacher par excellence, a senior advocate of Nigeria. Professor Ernest Ojukwu joins me here in our Abuja studio. Thank you so much, Prof, for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Give us a sense of what this means. It's clear that the president wanted autonomy for the judiciary, which in any case, the judiciary is the arbiter and has ruled on the side of the state against the position of the president. But the court has said the president's decision is unconstitutional.
Actually, the decision is not even in favor of the state. The decision is in favor of the federal government and the peoples of Nigeria. Yeah, the state lost the states lost the case, actually, when you look at the issues that they took to the court for decision.
So declaring it as the decision of the president as unconstitutional doesn't mean that the president or the executive arm of government lost out.
Yeah, it doesn't mean, because the real case brought by the states is to divest themselves of the burden of carrying the capital funding of the judiciary and transferring it to the federal government. That's actually the substance of their case. And the court decided that no, the state will still continue to bear the burden of the capital funding of the judiciary.
That's perhaps not part of the picture that a lot of Nigerians were seeing from the judgment today.
Yeah.
That's actually very insightful.
Yes.
And another, if you can explain further on that. Okay, so when the executive order came, it meant that the funding for the state legislature and judiciary should go directly to them. But we saw some governors say, look, we are the ones that are responsible. They bring the budget, they sign the budget, they defend the budget, and they execute the budget. So the federal government cannot have the power to tell them how to spend the money.
That's impunity. That's the impunity of the state governors, the impunity of the state in Nigeria. In fact, the problem about democracy in Nigeria has been created 10 times more than the federal government by the states. The states, even when people are crying for restructuring, give the states more powers, give them more function, more responsibilities. The few ones that the Constitution has provided, the states have refused to carry those responsibilities and obey the Constitution. Even up to the Constitutional Amendment that further enhanced the independence, the independence of the judiciary, especially the fiscal part. judicial officer, staff of the judiciary went to court, even got a judgment against the entire state for them to obey the constitution that gives independence, physical independence to the judiciary. The constitution is so clear on who and how the monies of the judiciary should be managed. Now, the state government still refuse to obey the constitutional rule, refuse to obey the court orders, and even when Juson, the staff of the judiciary, did a second strike, the longest one, the president only intervened and said, look, we can't continue this way. So he issued the executive order, drawing attention, because that's all that the president did. He was drawing attention to the breaches of the state government. He says, go and obey that constitution. That's just what the president said. The president wasn't making any new law. He said, go and obey the constitutional provision. Go and obey that court order. Pay over the monies due to the judiciary as and when due. Or I will take it as source and give them to the judiciary.
Does the president have the power?
That is that aspect. That's only 1/10 of the case that was decided today. That's only the aspect the majority of the court said no. The president doesn't have that power to become the policeman for both the federal.
Constitutionally speaking, does the executive have that power?
There's no express provision in the constitution giving the president that power to control the state. And so, even though we haven't read the exact words of the judgment to know what frame of mind the justices use in making the decisions, but if you read the snippets from the minority decision, Justice Abaji, he says, Justice Abaji said, look, yes, there's no express provision saying the president can seize their money and take it to the right person. Constitutional provision. But because what the president has done in the order is not to create a law or any new rule, he's only trying to enforce the constitutional provision, which he has a responsibility to. And therefore, that the executive order is not unconstitutional. That's the minority decision, which I applaud. Because you can't read constitutionalism in other people's context. You must read it in our context. You have a constitutional provision, a clear constitutional provision that tells the states what to do with judiciary money. You have a court order telling the governors to obey the constitutional provisions, and yet they refuse to obey 36 of them, 36 states. And it didn't matter to them whether they were from PDP or APC or any other party. They all ganged up. All the parties ganged up to disobey our constitutional provision and kill the democracy. And so that's the basis, the context in which the minority decision should be applauded. It can be interpreting all our provisions.
But the minority decision will not stand.
Oh, surely.
The majority decision stands.
It could one day emerge, because as more litigations will arise in our development, it could one day, the Supreme Court may one day make other decisions that will buy that idea to make further decisions. Because we must interpret our constitution based on our experience and context. Why would 36 governors decide, instead of paying the judiciary their money, we'll go and challenge the federal government for telling us, reminding us to obey the constitution?
I mean, the likes of, I remember Olisa Agbakoba, when he was the president of the bar, and this issue also came up. You remember, Prof, that recently, Juson almost shut down the entire judiciary. The courts were closed for several weeks, and there were protests on this same matter. The state government disagreed in some states and all of that. But the question is, the Olisa Agbakoba's case that he took in Ekiti State, and he took up the federal government on the powers of the judiciary to be independent. But right on this chair that you were seated, the Attorney General of the Federation was expressing his frustration about the pace of justice delivery in the nation. And he said, look, things are slow. But the CJN came and responded to say, it is not our fault. It is what the executive or any other system of the government has provided for us. Is the judiciary, in the true sense of it, independent?
Surely not. Not in Nigeria. Definitely not. There are so many aspects of judiciary independence. And we have not seen that independence in any form. At the federal level, in relation to their money, the judiciary money, I can tell you the federal government has done well, very well. At least since 1999, the judiciary have been receiving for the courts managed by the federal government. They have been receiving their fund at least within the budget level. In fact, in the last 5-6 years, except for 1 year, the judiciary received 100% of their budgeted fund. So in relation to that, the federal government has done very well. There's also the aspect of interference, executive interference, is 10 times more at the state level than at the federal level. The aspect of appointment of judges, the governors have hijacked the process of appointment of judges at state level, almost 98% of the times. So it's so bad, especially at the state level. We can't talk about judicial independence in Nigeria now.
Can you give us a sense of the interpretation and the spirit of the majority judgment and what the implication is?
I wish I had read the full judgment, but I have an idea. You know, one of the reasons may be that if you give a person authority like a president of a country, power that is not expressed in the Constitution, he may abuse it in another respect. We remember under President Obasanjo when he insisted that states that had created local governments outside the constitutional local governments must close them down or he won't send the states their fund. Lagos State refused to at least show that they were going to obey that directive, and Obasanjo seized the monies of Lagos State for several years. And even when there was a court order saying release their money, he still refused to release their money. The money was released only by the next president, Yaradua. So apparently the Supreme Court must be afraid of such situations where if you give an African leader certain leverage to operate in our context, that he may use it also against our interests and become a dictator. So this must be the reason why they don't want to allow the presidents, who are already very powerful, to extend their powers beyond the express provisions of the Constitution.
I mean, it then also means that signing an executive order is a form of lawmaking.
It is a form of lawmaking, but the general principle is that whatever executive order you sign must not be unconstitutional, must not go contrary to the provisions of the Constitution. If it does, the executive order, like any law made by the legislature that runs contrary to the Constitution, will be struck down by the courts. So executive orders are supposed to be searchlights on issues that are burning in the country. They are supposed to be to bring attention to issues. That's what executive order really does. It doesn't create any new law, so to say. It doesn't create any new rule. But when in the presidential system in the US, when the executive order is made, it's kind of the president saying, "Look, out of 100 things, my priority now is this one, and my ministers and secretaries and officers of state, please implement this as my priority." That's what executive order is actually. This is a priority list.
So, in interpretation of the majority decision of the court today, if you can give us a sense of what this means. So, the executive order 10 is dead.
Yes, the president cannot seize the monies of states to enforce the Constitution. That's what the bottom line of the majority decision. You don't have the power to force the states to obey the Constitution. You can't seize their money and say because they have breached the Constitution, you flog them into line. But somebody has to flog these states into line. I don't know how we're going to do it.
It reminds me, Prof, of the very heated argument between Professor Issesage on the issue of federalism. That lecture that Professor Issesage gave in the University of Benin, and which the Justice of the Supreme Court had to respond to it on our mood of operating federalism, that the federating units should have some sense of independence. And you said, look, flogging them into line. Also, these states are saying, look, the federal government is carrying too much burden. People talk about restructuring. How do we fix it?
That's the problem. This is one of the forms of restructuring. In fact, we have got more policy statements from the judiciary on restructuring than the legislature or any other group of people in Nigeria. We have had several cases from the courts dealing on the powers of state and powers of the federal government, and powers of local government, showing clearly the demarcations. And in this particular one, the states have refused to take their own power by obeying the rules. So the problem now is for those who are clamoring for a restructure. If we cannot obey one simple rule in a restructured form as it is, as bad as it may look, what we guarantee that we are going to benefit from a bigger restructuring? What I would have thought that the states should obey the simple ones that were provided in the Constitution, which is the only reason, which is the only way they can begin to even claim some ground from the federal government, even where the Constitution did not give them power.
If the federal government, or the APC government said, it's difficult for us to implement the restructuring agenda wholesomely, and they say we want to do it in piecemeal, is today's judgment a dampener for them?
The APC,
the government of the day? On the issue of the federal government?
Oh, yeah. You see, the federal government is not, it has a duty to the people of Nigeria, to ensure that our constitution is obeyed, to ensure that democracy survives. And any democracy, that doesn't have independence of judiciary will not survive. And so it should be a worrying issue for the federal government or anybody who is actually a human being in Nigeria. I'm not sure that our governors know that if we do not allow the independence of the judiciary to be enhanced, that we will never get democracy in Nigeria.
Because apart from the issue of funding seems to have taken a more popular attention compared to every other aspect of these other 10, is also people have raised question mark on even appointment of judges, which also question the powers of the court and the powers of the judiciary to be able to perform his role, the constitutional role. Where do we go from here then? From today, I mean, it does look like the Supreme Court has given its verdict, except if there is any other law that comes after this. But the law now is that we should probably return to status quo, isn't it?
No, that's what we are. I mean, the Supreme Court just restated the position of the Constitution now. Look, the states, you have the duty to fund the judiciary. At least at the level of that the federal government does with its own courts. You don't, dash them money and claim that you are giving them money. Some states think that because they are building new courts for the judiciary, that's judicial independence. Meanwhile, they are the executive people are controlling the process, and the heads of judiciaries in those states don't know when they are going to change their cars, for example. It's not in their powers to know. So if their cars go rickety and suddenly governor appears and dashes them cars, they become beholden to the governor. And these are the problems. So the governor will say, look, I've gave them cars. So why are they clamoring for more money or for independence?
Because even in some states, there are claims that some judges' salary has remained the way it's been
for years. Every state, from the Chief Justice of Nigeria to any other judge, the salary you start from one day, the salary you retire with. It doesn't change for a second.
And that does not apply to any aspect.
It doesn't determine whether or not you are senior or junior.
Unfortunately, the judges will claim they cannot talk for themselves.
And this salary is about the salary that have been on since about 2004.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it doesn't operate in any aspect of the civil service?
No. You keep rising with your money. I mean, you keep...
Judges cannot go on strike. They can't really speak for themselves.
Yeah.
But what is the biggest anomaly for you, Prof? Compared to other nations of the world, at least let's compare to the United States that we sometimes want to copy, sometimes their judicial, or even where we borrowed our common law from, the British system.
In relation to the
independence of judiciary.
Other aspects of the work.
The independence of judiciary. What is the biggest anomaly for you?
The biggest anomaly is not allowing them to do their work within their capacity. Nobody's saying that you must give, Sokoto State must give the same amount of money to the judiciary as Abia State or River State. But let there be, consistency, and let the judiciary decide within the general purview of budgeting of the state that this is our fund. We will know when we will need to buy a typewriter. We know when we need to change our lights. And it's not
without running to the governor
and the chief judges go to the government houses and sit down as like guests and wait for hours until the governor wants them in. And if you are a chief judge who is not ready to subjugate their values to going to sit down and run around governors, you will not get anything done. The judges many times need medical attention because they're overworked. You can't get some funding for medical attention for judges unless you go begging the governors, even on individual basis. So the individual judges become handicapped. They can't make decisions against certain political leaders in the state because if they do, they won't get money for medicals. They won't go for training. They won't get funding to fix the roof of the court. Because the governor is going to give it to them as if it's a handout. Now, give them, if you decide, based on the budgeting system and the science, and you decide 10,000 naira is for what to get in the year, give them the 10,000 naira so they can manage it. If they fail, then we'll come after them.
So because there are other issues, Prof, which I would like you to touch on, whether or not there's even a proper audit system within the judiciary, and that's probably the reason why the executive needs to oversight the judiciary if that is needed, and perhaps where do we need to go from here? We need to take a break, Prof. And when we come back, we get our closing moment with Professor Ernest Ojukwu on the way to go. We'll also be joined by a former Minister of Water Resources and a former Deputy Governor in Sokoto State, Mokhtar Shagari. And we dig deeper on the consequence of today's judgment on the independence of the judiciary. Stay with us, everyone. We'll be right back. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. Our closing moments now with Professor Ernest Ojukwu, Senior Advocate of Nigeria and Professor of Law. Thank you so much, Prof, for your time tonight. So you're giving us a breakdown for Nigerians to understand what this judgment is all about. We're hoping that in the days to come, we'll get a full picture of the judgment. But in context, how does this play out within the purview of constitutional amendment that is ongoing?
Well, you see, you can amend as much as you want. You can amend all the parts of the Constitution. Without the human being, we won't go anywhere. And this is an example of how an amendment of the Constitution is not our first roadmap. It is a human being that's our problem. This is an example where the states have refused to obey the simple provision of the Constitution, giving fiscal autonomy to them.
Does this take away the fact that they clamor for more powers?
Sure.
I mean, in Nigeria, is it not a fact that the state has less powers compared to the federal government?
It is. In fact, if you look at the Constitution in general, you find that based on our provisions now, the government is like a unitary government, almost, giving most responsibilities and authority.
So we don't really operate a federal system
not fully.
In the real sense of it.
Sure. And that's why it's sad that for this little avenue for implementing state autonomy, the states have abused it. That's the saddest part of our constitutional development. The little opening for asserting state autonomy, the states have refused to assert it and have rather abused it.
So the contrast between the central government and the federating unit is what seems to be playing out in the state, where the executive arm of government in the state has an overbearing role on the legislature and the judiciary, which the president said he wanted to correct.
Sure.
But how do we, on the final note, Prof, how do we correct this whole thing? People have been clamoring for restructuring. Yeah. What is exactly the way out?
Well, it's a political decision at the end of the day. We have to, the civil society, we have to rise against our governors and our legislators. Our governors are a problem in Nigeria. I can tell you the truth. The general principle of backwardness and the lack of good governance today is more in the states than at the federal level. The states have strategically, diverted the attention of the masses from themselves to the federal government as the problem. The problem of Nigeria are our governors, not the states, not the federal government.
So how do we fix it?
Well, we have to.
We have a confab report that is not implemented.
Oh, sure. It is now left to us, those who are being ruled, to rise, because there's need for more and more civil awareness and engagement, more than we have had now. We have left our leaders, the legislators, the governors alone for too long to manage us irresponsibly, if you allow me to use that word. There's so much they have done to our system that if we don't correct it, our democratic dividend will never be achieved.
Professor Ernest Ojukwu, Senior Advocate of Nigeria and a Professor of Law. Thank you so much, Prof, for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Sean.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you
so much. Let's continue with the conversation. You've heard a legal opinion, but let's get to hear from those who have administered state resources in the past. We are now being joined by a former Minister of Minister of Water Resources under the Obasanjo administration and served as the Deputy Governor of Sokoto State from 2007 to 2015. He's a lawyer and a former Sokoto State Attorney General and Commissioner of Justice. Mr. Mukhtar Shagari joins us from his residence in Abuja. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for joining us tonight. Give us a sense of what this today's decision of the Supreme Court means to you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let's start this way. You know, there's no way democracy can thrive and be successful anywhere in the world unless you have independence of the judiciary and you have independence of the legislature. That is what makes democracy thick, because you have to have strong institutions. And the institutions that have been strong for things to work are the judiciary and the legislature. That is why I believe it's very important that the judiciary must have independence from the states. They must have their own funds, they must have their own money, they must run their own affairs. They should not go cap in hand asking for money from the executives. But be it that as it may, today a judgment has been made by the Supreme Court, a ruling, which has told us that no, what the president did by issuing Executive Order number 10 is completely against the Constitution of Nigeria. The Federal Ministry of Justice has come out to say, well, look, he has these powers to do that under Section 12, subsection 3, and then Section 5 of the Constitution of Nigeria. But we have to understand that it's the judiciary that has the responsibility to interpret our laws. The judiciary today has interpreted the law and said, look, the president issued a wrong order and that federal government, whether through the accounting general or any other institution, cannot deduct money from the state funds and give to judiciary, whatever it is. I think for me, it is a bit disturbing. It is a bit disturbing in the sense that we are not looking at this very important institution to which every Nigerian look up to for protection and so on, because it's a judiciary that will actually protect the poor man, that can also protect the rich man, and that can ensure that we have law and order in our country. I feel very strongly that the judiciary, whatever it is, whatever happens there, must be free and independent to pass judgments, whether against the government or against any individuals. But it's so unfortunate that some of our governors believe that once they are there in power, they must control everything, including the judiciary. And I believe it is simply wrong. But you see, the laws of this country passed by the legislature don't have life. It is us, the human beings, that put life to them. So even with the judgment of the Supreme Court, I believe that the state governments can still do something to make the judiciary feel independent and to make them feel fearless so that they can pass judgments without fear or favor against any other person in the country. The issue is about us. The issue is about the people that are running the affairs of this country. If I have the opportunity to run the affairs of this country, I believe the judiciary will be free and will be able to discharge their responsibilities as they should. The judiciary, the judges, must not be going to the governors or federal government to be looking for money to go for medical checkups and the rest of it. They don't have to be looking for money to buy cars. They don't have to look for money to be looking for typewriters and other things and so on and so forth. We must, and it has to be done one day. Somehow, the judiciary must be independent. It must be able to discharge responsibilities to Nigerians, to Nigeria, as it should be.
All right, we reckon with your experience and your background as a lawyer, Commissioner for Justice, Attorney General of a state, and a former deputy governor who served 2 terms in his state. And so the reason why we wanted to invite you or speak to you tonight to glean from your experience and what you have encountered. Let me put it to you, because Prof said, blame some of the governors for some of the anomaly that we see in not allowing the legislature and the judiciary do their jobs in the state. For you, what is the biggest anomaly that you saw while in office that makes the work of the judiciary and the legislature at the state level a joke?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me put it this way. I had the opportunity to advise two governments on issues relating to justice and so on. When I worked as the Attorney General, I made it very clear to my governor, then they were called administrators, that we will not interfere in the way the judiciary discharge their responsibilities. And if we have a reason to do anything, we must do it properly in accordance with the laws of this country. So throughout that period that I served as Attorney General, we did not interfere with the way the judiciary ran its own affairs. We did not hold any funds that is supposed to go to the judiciary. We gave them. When I served as Deputy Governor of Sokoto State, I noticed that once in a while, the Chief Judge will come to the government house. The Grand Card will come to the government house and advise my governor, no, that's not the way it should be. We have a responsibility to make these people feel comfortable, give them whatever they need without interfering in their own affairs. I can assure you and tell you that throughout that period, we never interfered with the judiciary. And I feel that it is wrong for a chief judge, to be allowed to go to government house, cap in hand, to beg for money, either to go for courses or to go for conferences or to go for medical checkup and the rest of it and so on and so forth. I think the anomaly is that we, the operators of the law, we feel that once you are the chief executive of the state, you are alpha and omega, and that the judiciary is under you, the legislature is under it, everyone else is under you. I think we must take that.
Let me get a follow-up on the question that I asked. So because I wanted to know what some of the problems are so that we can prefer solutions to them. So in this sense, let's first and foremost know, the monies that go to the judiciary and legislature, are these monies first-line charge?
Yes, you see, actually, once the money gets to the states into their account, they control this money. But the issue is there was an order, executive order, which was signed by the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in its effort to make sure that the judiciary is separated from the executive. But the problem is that those who operate this, most of them don't want to do it because they feel they must control the judiciary. I know in Sokoto State, the governor presently now, Waziri Tambwal, who is a lawyer and also a legislator, who was also a former speaker of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, he gives the judiciary their own money, and he does not interfere. And this is the way all governors should behave. Make the judiciary feel independent, feel free, and have the latitude to be able to pass judgments without interference from anybody and without the fear that they will be, in fact, victimized. I think that the federal government should go back to Supreme Court and ask the Supreme Court to look at this judgment today and change it. Our judiciary must be independent. Our judiciary must have the latitude to be able to pass judgments without fear or favor. Our judiciary must not go to the chief executive of any state to look for money. They must have their own money and they must run their own affairs. So that is the bottom line.
Your Excellency, if I may quickly come in again, it does look like what the Supreme Court did today, from our own point of view, is that it sent everyone back to what the Constitution says. And it says, look, just go back to what the Constitution as it is. So the question is, even when you go back to the Supreme Court will still say, this is what the Constitution states and says, except if something drastic is changed in our laws as it is right now. It then means that we need to tinker with the letters of the Constitution. And how do we go about it? Because if you look at what the Attorney General says in defense of the Order 10, is that they want the independence of the judiciary, but the Supreme Court says, look, that is out of your powers. You cannot do that. So how do we achieve that independence, which some people are saying, look, is some kind of restructuring?
Well, you see, the issue is this. The Constitution of Nigeria was drafted by human beings. And human beings are expected to make decisions that may not be right. A law is organic. A law, can always change depending on the circumstances. I feel that the Constitution must be amended to make it so clear, that the judiciary must be funded independent of either the federal government or independent of the state government. I actually believe that the Supreme Court made a judgment based on what they think the interpretation of the law should be. Nobody is blaming the Supreme Court, but we feel that for us to have an independent judiciary where the rule of law will be the order of the day, the Constitution of this country must be amended to make it so clear to everybody that this is where it stands as far as the funding of judiciary is concerned. Restructuring is very important, but what is restructuring? Once you do the right things, nobody will ask you for restructuring. People are asking for restructuring now because they believe that so many things are wrong. The Constitution we have was not given to us by the Nigerian people. It was given to us by the military. The military gathered some people, and they debated, they discussed, and so on, came up with a document which was given to the military administration at that time, and they decided that this should be the Constitution of Nigeria. So let's look at our Constitution holistically. Let us be on the side of the people, not on the side of the executive, on the side of any big man in this country, and do things that can make this country work, and do things that can make democracy in this country work, and do things that can create strong institutions, the judiciary, the legislature, and the rest of it. People have not been talking about the legislature at the state level. They are not different from what is happening in the judiciary, because every legislator today in this country is at the mercy of the chief executive of the state. This is very well known. So I think we should look at our Constitution and look at it holistically, without fear or favor, without thinking of my own zone, without thinking of my own state, without thinking of my tribe, without thinking of my religion, and do things that can make Nigeria great. And you cannot have great democracy, you cannot have great country as long as you don't have strong institutions, and strong institutions that are working.
So I'd like to put this question, as difficult as it may for you, Professor Ojukwu said that the governors are the problems. Is it true?
Well, I actually wouldn't say the governors are. We are all the problem. The problems in Nigeria cannot just be given to just one person, cannot be said it's about one person. It is about all of us. If we refuse to do the wrong things will go away. If the leadership just continuously do the wrong things, people will believe that doing the wrong thing is the right thing. So it is about all of us. And I would want to also call on the governors. They should also help to make this country and our democracy strong and better. Those governors that are treating their judiciary in the best way they should be treated, we congratulate them. Those that are not doing it, they should learn from those that are doing it.
So in this sense, what is your biggest fear for those who believe that if you go to some of the courts in the state against the government, because the essence of going to court or the judiciary adjudicating in matters is when you have issues against the government, or you have issues against another person, or government against government. But in this case, with the manner in which the courts and the legislature in the state are being run, the fear that people had, the federal government had this fear and made the order 10, can you say that an average citizen can get justice?
Yes, I believe that an average person can get justice if you have a strong judge, because the judges themselves also have to be fearless. They have to stand their ground. They have to carry out their own constitutional duties and responsibilities.
So that's the question, that if the judges don't have the right environment and the right infrastructure, and they are not independent in their mind and in the monies that come into their pocket, how then can they adjudicate properly when they have some people breathing over their necks? They are not independent. And that's why I'm asking the question, can you say that an average Nigerian can get justice in states where supposedly, allegedly, the governors have overbearing powers over the courts?
Well, you see, this is the problem. And this is why I say that the chief executives of the states must not, for any reason, interfere with the way the judiciary runs its own affairs. Every chief executive in any state swore with the Quran or swore with the Bible that he will uphold the laws of this country. Upholding the laws of this country includes respecting the independence of the judiciary, whether you give them money or you don't give them money. And we should also understand that those of us who are in governance, who are in politics and so on, being a governor is a temporary thing. The maximum time you can stay as a governor is 8 years. And if you are a legislator, the maximum time you can stay, maybe unless you are voted again, is actually about 4 years. So I think that we should look at the issues that are militating against the development and progress of this country, the issues that are actually making it so difficult for the ordinary person to even have confidence in the judiciary, and do away with them. If you are a governor, you must know that you are governing people. And you must know that once there's a dispute between you and any individual in your state, that individual has a place he can go and seek for his right. And that must not be stopped. But I want to also say that the judiciary must be strong. Whether there is funding or no funding, they too, they've sworn to uphold the laws of this country, so they must not fear that if I do not do this, this will not happen or that will not happen. Once you put that in your mind, then you cannot go anywhere. Then you cannot pass sound judgment. I have absolute confidence in the judiciary of this country in so many decisions that have taken place, both at the state level, both at the appeal court, and also the Supreme Court. And I think the decision today also has shown that the Supreme Court does not care whether it is against the judiciary, it's against the government, it's against the individual. What they do is they do their job of interpreting the law. They've interpreted the law today, and they are telling us that, well, if you are not satisfied with that, look at your constitution and do something about it. But independence of judiciary is key to good governance. It's key to development.
All right.
It's also key
let me, for someone who has served in the temple of justice, you have also been an attorney general, and you have served in the executive. So you have somewhat an overview, a bird's-eye view of the situation of things. If you are to be in a situation to fix the problem of the independence of the legislature and the judiciary, what is that one thing that you will do?
What I will do is I will tell the chief judge of the state, you have the freedom to do your duty and pass judgment and carry out your responsibilities without the fear that I'll interfere, because I will not. I will also tell the legislature that you are elected by the people. I am also elected by the people for us to work for them. You will do your duty responsibly, and I will do my duty responsibly, and I will not interfere with what you will do. But you have to understand that you are voted into power because you told people what you are going to do if you become a legislator. And the issue is that we all have to work together to make things work without interfering in the way each one of us does his own thing. So for me, if I have the opportunity, the judiciary in my state will be totally independent. The legislator in my state will be totally independent.
So this is how I would like us to end the conversation tonight, Your Excellency. And I'd like to ask you, is the legislature and the judiciary in our states today, are they subservient to the governors or the executive?
No, come again, please. I didn't get the question.
I'm asking the question. It does look like an obvious one, but I wanted to get the right perspective from you. I'm asking, are the legislature and judiciary in the 36 states of the Federation under the executive, are they subservient to the executive arm of government?
Well, now I cannot tell you that because I'm not in the executive. I'm also in the judicial, but what I know is what I know about my state, because I interact with the governor, I also interact with the chief judge and the rest of them and so on. In Sokoto State, for example, I know that the judiciary is totally independent. And I know that the legislature also is independent, but they work together with the state executive to make sure they deliver the democracy dividends that the people of Sokoto State are also, well, in fact, expecting. What happens in other states, I don't know. But I've made this point very clear, and I want to make it very clear. The independence of judiciary, the independence of the legislature are extremely very important for our democracy to grow and for this nation also to grow.
Your Excellency, Mukhtar Shagari, former Deputy Governor of Sokoto State and former Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice in Sokoto State. Thank you so much indeed for your time tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. You are most welcome.
And that's our show for tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'll see you again 8 p.m. on Sunday, right here on Channels Television. It's bye for now.